Just like we hear from a lot from women, I want a more emotionally, I want a more vulnerable man. I want a more sensitive man. Okay, cool. And I've asked this to groups of women. If women listening to this, if you're like, yeah, that sounds great. I would love a more emotionally intelligent, sensitive man, a vulnerable man. Okay, I'll ask this question. What if you have a guy that cries twice a year? Like, oh, that'd be so beautiful if he expressed himself that way and I got to feel him that way. I'm like, cool. How about once a month? And it's like, well, yeah. That'd also be, and we'd connect over our deep. And I'm like, cool. How about once a week? How about twice a day? Would you be okay with that? Like strong, you want the vulnerable, sensitive man? What if he cries every hour? Now it's like an instant, like whoop change. Like, no, that's a weak man. I don't want him. I want a leader. I want such and such. So again, there's confusion.
Well, it depends on what you're crying about. At the end of the day, the other thing is if you think that we've had to adjust and adapt, one thing that I don't think is probably talked about very often is what about the changes what about these particular changes have happened across the other gender? When we talk about women in general, right? Women are immediately turned off if you're crying about something they don't find it's appropriate to cry about. If you're crying about something they find it's appropriate to cry about, by all means, that's okay. But if you're crying because you had a bad day at work, I can tell you right now, guys, and any of the ladies listening, please help us understand better. But I don't believe that you're going to be very excited about your man being in that way, being that vulnerable. That's a vulnerability line that immediately becomes a turn off. You're not attracted to that. So we have to remember that these are things that are truthful. We can talk about whatever we want to talk about and make it whatever we want to make it. And people can lie to themselves and all their friends. But the reality is we all know people that got too sensitive and too vulnerable and it flipped on them. And it's not a benefit. They end up getting left, getting cheated on, getting taken advantage of. And you know what their wives say? Their wives say something along the lines of, well, you know, he wasn't really there for me the way I needed him there. Or, I mean, this happens all the time. We're in our mid 40s. We all have friends that this has happened to.
Yeah. Over and over and over again. So this is great. So I'm going to steal that. Because I would imagine now sitting in front of a group full of women and saying, okay, your man's father just died. Do you want him to share that and express that and be with that grief? And they'd most likely say yes. And that'd be a very human thing to say. Now, your man comes home and says, hey, my female boss scolded me via email. And he sobs for the next 2 hours because life's unfair. And how could she? And work's tough. Now tell me, how are we doing here? How are we doing in this relationship? Because the reason I brought up earlier, the primal and the divine is my two pillars. On some level, we all want to feel two things. This is from my teacher, Dewey Freeman, who's a savant with horses. The first time he said to me, horses need to know where they fit in the pack and are they safe? And I remember thinking, sounds a lot like women. And then my next thought was, sounds a lot like men. My next thought was, sounds a lot like all of us. And so do you feel safe? And guys listening to this, I would not feel safe in front of a man who just had a tragic thing happen to him. And he goes, no, I'm fine. Said I was fine. I don't want to talk about it. I'm fine. Like, bro, it's written all over you. Something happened to you. You need to get that shit out of you. Or I was horribly abused from, age 4 to 14 by every boyfriend my mom brought home. How you doing? I'm fine. There's nothing left with that. Did you go to therapy? Did you work through it? Nope. I'm a grown ass man. I manned up and I fucking got through it. I'm like, I don't trust you. I don't feel safe around you. So imagine a woman who's got an even higher or heightened sense of emotional radar. When we literally just swallow it and go, nope, nothing. I'm fine. They know that you're out of integrity. You're not congruent with what just happened to you. They will not feel safe around you. They will not trust you. Just like if your emotion is so overblown all the time. I got an email, they told me I'm not doing great at work, and here I am sobbing for 5 days straight. You're going to say, hey, that's not an appropriate response to the stimulus. I can't trust you. I don't feel safe around you. I think that's what the core of what a lot of women are asking from us. But there's also distortions on each side, obviously. And when men, it happens over and over and over, Scott. I've talked to thousands of guys who have said, my partner told me to open up and be more vulnerable. I did. 2 fights later, that was brought up and used against me.
A
And
hundred
so
percent.
what did
A
I learn?
hundred
And
percent.
this is our logical male brain. Our logical male brain goes, cool, I'll never do that again.
Yeah.
You've just taught me a lesson. I'll
What are you
never do it again.
what are you gonna cry about it? What are you gonna, how weak
Exactly.
can you possibly be? There is no
Exactly.
boundary. You know those things are going to happen. And the reality is it, remember the directions and the changes that we talked about that needed to be made are things that everybody will agree on. I've interviewed some really amazing people on the show, some who have had some horrid sexual trauma and major things that have happened, female guests, and they are teaching their boys the right things, how to know, true consent, things that were taken advantage of by them in pretty horrible ways, right? I know things need to change, but at the same time, a lot of the people that are talking about the other changes that have to happen to be people that are not in a healthy relationship, that they're
Yep.
guiding you on what you should or shouldn't be doing when it comes to you as a man in a
Mhm.
relationship with a healthy woman. My wife and I we've been married 20 years or
Good for you,
more.
man.
Yeah, it's great. We're always growing, always learning, always getting better,
Yeah.
and I think there have been lots of learning curves in our marriage, but I can tell you there have been times where, it's not vulnerability, but just complaining a little too much. Like if I find myself complaining, and I'm
Mhm.
not even a complainer, but occasionally I'll be like, it's just, man, it was tough. It was horrible, blah, blah, blah. I could see the zoned out happening. Like,
Mhm.
and I am saying, okay, I'm appreciative of it. Truthfully, I'm appreciative of it because I don't need that. I don't need to go too far deep into what's not working or where I'm not. And it's almost like you get so comfortable. It's like having the comfort you have with your mother, or there's
Yep.
very few people you get that level of comfort with. And when you're married for as long as I have been, which is still a new marriage as far as, I'm concerned, um, there's a lot to grow and learn in. All I'm saying is that a lot of the things that we see on social media of people telling men what they need to do more of are not coming from women like my wife, who are amazing women, who are independent women, who are strong, who are successful, who are great mothers, who love their life, who love their husband, who
Right.
love their jobs. Like, it's coming from people who are miserable and want to destroy you as well, so that
Yeah.
everybody's miserable together. And that's
Yeah.
not cool. That's the
I
opposite of what we're aiming for. If you like clips like this, I have a similar clip here. And if you want to watch the full video, click here.